Now, these talks have been happening for a while. NBC New York reported in June that Mangione's attorneys were talking to federal prosecutors about a possible plea deal. It's all happening as we're coming up on both of his trials, his federal trial in January of next year, and jury selection in his state trial is set to start September 8th. Now, Mangione has pleaded not guilty to the state charges, and it's important to note here, even if he pleads guilty to the federal charges, he could still go on trial in state court. Now, we've seen crowds of his supporters show up outside court, some of them even filling the rolls inside the court during these hearings. And we have team coverage as well. Stephen Romo is in New York. Misty Marris has our legal analysis. Stephen, let's start with you. So no comment from prosecutors or defense about these talks quite yet, right? And what more do we know about what happened between previous plea deal talks and now?
Yeah, a great question, Ryan. We know that as recently as June, we had reporting about talks over a plea deal that eventually fell apart. This time around, we have sources saying that Luigi Mangione is expected to plead guilty for those two remaining federal stalking charges. But I want to stress, as you mentioned, it is not a done deal yet. Mangione could still change his mind. It could still fall apart. But even if he does go through with this plea deal, it's still in the hands of the judge to decide whether or not if she wants to accept this and accept the prosecution's recommendations under this deal. And even if it does go through, we still don't yet know what exactly Mangione is getting in return. Does this include an agreement for a sentence that's less than life in prison, which is what he currently faces? And that alone would have some major impacts on his state trial, because in pleading guilty to these charges, Mangione will have to acknowledge on a factual basis what he's admitting to. Also brings in the question of double jeopardy here. New York has some strong statutory protections against it. There will no doubt be a new legal fight that is set off on the state trial, if it can go forward, if this plea deal goes through. Ryan?
Of course, it is a big if. He could change his mind right up until the last moment. Stephen Romo, thank you so much for that. Let's bring in Misty Marris now to break it all down for us. So, Misty, you know, from the moment Mangione was charged in state and federal court in the same jurisdiction, his legal team's been arguing that his rights are being violated. So talk to me about the timing here. Why make this plea now? What does it all mean?
So there's a really strong reason to make this plea before the state court case moves forward. And that's because these double jeopardy protections only run one way, meaning there has to be a plea or a conviction in that federal court case before the defense team can even make the argument in state court that double jeopardy attaches. In fact, they already tried the argument about a year ago, way before we even had dates for the trial. And the state court judge said it's premature because that federal case, there's been no disposition. It hasn't been decided. So this timing to try and get a federal plea deal before that state court case, that's a strategic move. And it really only makes sense to have these federal court plea discussions if they can utilize it to try and kick out that state case.
And we talked about this a little bit with Stephen, but the plea talks ahead of a trial, they're pretty common. But Mangione holds all the cards here, at least at this plea stage, right? Could he reverse his decision at any minute, even during the trial, because these talks are very sensitive?
Yeah, plea discussions can happen all the way through trial, and sometimes you see plea deals even after a jury is in deliberations. But here, a plea deal is all about what types of concessions the prosecutor might be willing to make that would cut off some of the potential penalty for Mangione. Remember, the two charges that he is faced with carry a potential life sentence. Ultimately, it will be up to the judge what amount of time he will spend behind bars. So the question is, what are federal prosecutors willing to offer? You know, you have a death in this case, Ryan. So I highly doubt you're going to see some low-level charge or a lesser-included offense. Could it be a recommendation for a lower sentence by prosecutors? Or could it be what we call an open plea, which is Mangione pleads guilty, prosecutors make no promises, but he can make some mitigating arguments to the judge about taking responsibility. So we'll see how it all plays out tomorrow.
There's so many things we don't know yet, and much of those questions to be answered tomorrow morning. Misty Marris, thank you so much for that.